These are the famous wild Chincoteague ponies, made popular by the series of children's stories called Misty of Chincoteague. And this is their home, Chicoteague Island. The Chesapeake Bay separates the coast of Virginia from a narrow peninsula called the Eastern Shore. On the Atlantic Ocean side of the eastern shore are two small islands, Chincoteague Island and Chicoteague Island. These islands are known as barrier islands because they form a barrier between the mainland and the ocean. Chicoteague, which is a wildlife refuge, is home for the ponies. Now, the origin of the ponies is a mystery. One theory is that they were washed ashore when a Spanish galleon sank off the eastern shore, and the ponies that were able to swim ashore took up residence here on Chicoteague Island. The ponies are left pretty much to themselves most of the year. They must weather the storms of the Atlantic coast, find their own food, and care for their young by themselves, as wild animals have done for hundreds of years. Today, the ponies are owned by the fire department on neighboring Chincoteague Island. Once a year, the ponies are rounded up and sold at auction to provide funds to help provide fire protection for the island of Chincoteague. Several days before the auction, firemen begin arriving on the island for the annual roundup.
My name is Wexler Blossom. I'm a Chicoteague Volunteer Fire Company. I've been fooling with the ponies ever since about 12, 13-year-old. This is the 59th anniversary of swimming horses across the channel. Well, we start out on a Sunday and get done by Tuesday. We have our own horses, and we have to go from up the beach, up what they call Post Island, and work on down.
The drive, which will take several days, begins at the far end of the island near the Maryland state line and works back south toward the lighthouse. As the various herds are found, they are started moving south toward the first holding area near the center of the island.
We got about between 11 and 12 stud horses. They're all separate in each band. They're pretty well the same place you go in about every year. They graze a certain place up the beach, down the beach. But we don't get that one day, we go back the next day and pick them up.
When the majority of the ponies have been rounded up, the drive begins to the lighthouse corral. This drive is often made along the beach, through the surf. Few visitors see the roundup because these areas of the island are accessible only by foot. After coming through the surf for several miles, the drive turns inland toward what is called the Big Horse Pound. The Lighthouse Corral is the last stop before the annual swim to Chincoteague Island and auction at the Fireman's Carnival. While the roundup continues on Cedar, visitors begin pouring into the town of Chincoteague on Chicoteague Island, where the carnival and auction will take place. The access road to the island crosses several miles of salt marsh. The smell and the feel of salt air become increasingly strong as the island town becomes visible across the last channel separating Chincoteague from the mainland. Here on Chincoteague, everything revolves around the sea. The seafood industry provides most of the work for the islanders. Numerous ocean-going trawlers are based on the island. Seafood processing houses are numerous around the island. Recreation provided by the water also draws many visitors and provides a sizable income for the area. While Chincoteague is a modern community, it still retains much of its past in its architecture and custom and in the ways of its people, which gives Chincoteague its character. Today, Cedar Island is protected by the federal government's National Park Service as a wildlife refuge, and the Atlantic Beach has been designated a national seashore administered by the Department of the Interior. The island affords visitors an opportunity to see wildlife and waterfowl in their natural setting. Here in the horse pound near the lighthouse, visitors get a good look at this year's ponies. Firemen make a last check of the ponies in preparation for the long-awaited swim. The crowd begins to gather early on the day of the pony swim. Most of these spectators probably never have seen a swim. However, a surprising number of pony enthusiasts return year after year. After the firemen release the ponies from the corral, it will still be an hour or so until they cross the marshy area of the island and arrive at the channel. The proper tide is also taken into account so as to provide maximum safety for the ponies. As slack tide approaches, the crowd grows on the land in the trees, and on the water. The time has arrived that thousands of people have waited for. As the ponies are put overboard, as the islanders say, a cheer goes up from the assembled throng of pony watchers on the far side of the channel. The actual swim is surprisingly short, but everyone who has gotten close enough to see seems to feel it was worthwhile, and doubtless many will return another year. The first pony to hit the beach is crowned king or queen of the carnival. After the short rest, the ponies are driven through the streets of Chincoteague. At this point, almost everything on the island seems to be moving toward the carnival grounds. The ponies arrive to a wild welcome. The rest of the day is a time to see the ponies close up and to enjoy the fireman's carnival. truly a community effort. All of the activities are run by the fire department. Firemen operate most of the rides. Thursday morning is devoted to the auction of the ponies. As the crowd gets caught up in the excitement, pony after pony finds a new home. Some go to people that came to buy, and others to people who never thought of owning a pony. That is, until now. The wild pony rides are also great crowd pleasers. Anyone can step out of the crowd and try a hand at taming a wild pony. And for some unknown reason, many do. The food and rides continue at the carnival through the afternoon and into the evening. The crowd is much smaller at the end of the week for the return swim to Chincoteague, sometimes called the Swim to Freedom. Back home on Cedar Island, the ponies that were not sold begin dividing up into their individual bands as soon as they arrive on the island. And thus, another year in the wild has begun for the wild ponies of Chincoteague.
Alright, so some things to notice here. One is there was an optical soundtrack. And this is a negative. Normally the optical soundtrack is not black. It is white against a black background. The other thing to notice is I showed the full frame here. You see all the dust that accumulated? This is acetate. And so acetate builds up a static charge, so dirt sticks to it. And so there you go. Yeah, wow. Anyways, so we discovered that in going through some stuff, and that reel was super warped, so that's why I have that little foam core guard there, so that it doesn't all build up. Anyways, I'm Skip Elsheimer. Welcome to the AVgeeks Lunchtime Streaming Show, where we watch old 16mm films, and sometimes they just have an optical soundtrack. So that's what we just saw. Let's learn about robbers underwater. Enjoy.
The mysteries of nature are as infinite as they are fascinating. Thousands of books have been written in an effort to explain these mysteries, and the man who can best explain them is, of course, our friend with the encyclopedic mind, Mr. John Kieran. Right now, Mr. Kieran is in his library with Paul Milford, his next-door neighbor. Let's listen.
John, I was invited to go fishing for pike. Somehow or other, I've always thought it's rather unfair to go after anything smaller than a marlin. Have you got any ideas on the subject?
Well, Paul, all I know is that we aren't nearly as cruel to fish as fish are to fish. And we don't catch nearly as many fish as fish do.
Well, I've never looked at it that way, John.
As a matter of fact, that very wise old gentleman, Benjamin Franklin, he turned vegetarian for a while, until he finally decided that if fish could eat fish, he could eat fish too.
Well, I'm not one to disagree with Ben Franklin.
Life underwater is a pretty savage affair, Paul. In fact, I think you might call it a fish-eat-fish existence. But you can also call this the most thrilling fish story you ever encountered.
This is the story of the fish we call the pike, P-I-K-E. And we start in the springtime. These are the spring floods covering the landscape. We begin with a full-grown pike. In the spring, as Tennyson said, a livelier iris comes upon the burnished dove. In the spring, a young man's fancy lately turns to thoughts of love. Well, the fish are in on that, too. The pike, which ordinarily goes around all by itself, hunting for food, is moved by the spirit of spring and starts in to think of family matters. And they gather together and head for the spawning beds, just as the salmon run up the Columbia River to spawn by the hundreds of thousands. Now here are the males and females scouting around for a good place for the eggs to hatch. Now they're giving the spawning bed a going over, so to speak. Now here are the eggs being dropped by the female. Those eggs are called roe, R-O-E, and fish eggs are what you eat when you eat shad roe. And caviar, too. Caviar is the roe or egg of the sturgeon. Of course, another difference is that the caviar costs a lot more. Now, it seems that there are more than human beings that are fond of roe, because here you see the smaller fish of another species dining on the roe of the pike. That's the first hazard that the pikes have in their life cycle. Now, this is the male depositing the milt, M-I-L-T. That's the male element, the spermatozoa, that sinks down through the water and fertilizes the eggs. Here are some fertilized eggs, and they're already growing by fission and cleavage. Now, these pictures, of course, are very much magnified. That's the young pike inside the egg. And Grandma, what big eyes it has. Now, here are the young pike just out of the egg. And as a matter of fact, they're carrying part of the egg with them, that swollen part there. That's the yolk sac, and that's the first food of the young pike. There you can see it's beginning to breathe. Well, you can see spring has come along, the foliage is out now, and the young fish are growing a little bit and scouting around more freely for all the different kind of food on which they live and which they find in the water. All water is filled with myriad forms of animal and vegetable life, and practically anything that comes to a fish's mouth is food. They will eat anything, including each other. Those are fleas, water fleas of some kind that you see dashing around. And of course, all this time, those young fish are eating and running the risk of being eaten. That's the way it is underwater. Eat while you can, because there's always a chance that you will be eaten yourself. It's really a rough life, although it looks quiet enough. It's later in the season now, and you can see that fish has grown. And he has a bad eye, a wicked eye. Of course, a pike is a game fish, a predator. It is really dangerous to others that are any smaller than it is. Well, there's a chap that's just grabbed himself a good full meal. Now you can see the reason why other fishers rather hesitate to come near the pike. Look at that dental equipment. That'd make a good back scratcher. Now here's a big pike looking around for what he might devour. And he might devour anything a little smaller than he is himself. There's one has a victim ready for the oven. He really has a mouthful. This is a very much magnified picture of the head of the nymph of a dragonfly, the form that lives underwater and later climbs above water and develops the wings that we see when it flies around. Now here are two of these dragonfly nymphs have grabbed a fish and they're feeding on it. Of course, they themselves may become food for some larger fish. It's late in the season now. The fall has arrived, and the fish is pretty well grown. Still has that mean look. In fact, it's getting meaner all the time. He didn't seem hungry at first, but I think he's working up an appetite. Uh-oh, here comes a heron, a bird that likes a tasty dish of fish. And the heron has a fish. There's one less pike in that pond. Well, there's a pike with a lean and hungry look like yon Cassius. And that other fish takes a hint and moves on. Now here's a big pike looking hungrily at a smaller pike. They eat one another. There's another little family quarrel, but that one escaped, but the pike has caught another type of fish. This time I think he has bitten off more than he can chew. Here comes a crayfish. Now ordinarily a crayfish wouldn't want to do any business with a pike of that size, but this pike has a bad case of indigestion at the moment, and Dr. Crayfish is coming along to relieve him by eating some of that food. That's a stickleback, not a handsome fish. Here's another pike looking for a meal, and that's a poor perch, an inoffensive perch, and now it's a meal for the pike. Life can be cruel underwater. Now that fish has a bad eye, no question about it. I don't think it's a good-natured fish, and it sees something, a worm on a hook, and the pike falls for it. Well, that's the finish of one pike, but there are always more fish in the water than ever came out of it, and the life cycle of the pike goes on forever.
That was abrupt. So that was... I think I read this, and this could be totally fabricated. I think that John Kieran had a radio show, and so when television started happening, they were hungry for content, so they recorded these little shorts that they syndicated. So this next film I have on the scanner, we've been, look, I've been saying over the last couple of months, we've been moving films out of the archive. Lots and lots and lots and lots of films. More than 20,000, I would say. And so now what we're left with is stragglers. Odds and ends where I'm not sure like what they are, like what box they were in, like what they... So yesterday we watched some from the Bergen Amateur Club, The Slasher, and then of course Serenade to a Maid, which actually had sound and was hilarious. So this film was one that was in a box, and it was in a situation that was very similar to this, in that it had fallen, the core of it had popped out, and that's because of tension issues, or I don't know what, but it's demoralizing. So I got it back on the reel yesterday, and then today I was trying to move it, and then it popped again, so I had to do it again. So this better be good. I don't know what this is. Some of this is a TV trailer, some of it's PSAs, some of it's just random stuff. And I watched a little bit of this, and it looks like random stuff. So, you get to see, just like me, what it is. Let me reposition this so you don't have to see the entire frame. Doing this live. Alright, I think that's gonna work. Alright. This is miscellaneous compilation reel. I know it's interesting to see me typing without really seeing what I'm typing. Alright, enjoy.
This is sleep. Sleep. A familiar phenomenon that has never been fully explained. No one knows why we sleep, but all of us know it's quite impossible to go without it for very long. It's much easier to go hungry or thirsty than to go without sleep. Take this fellow here. All he can think about at the moment is sleep. All he has to do is find a nice, comfortable place to curl up, as sleepy folks have always done. The first written record of beds is in the Bible, dating from about 521 BC in the book of Esther. If our sleepy friend had lived those several hundred centuries ago, he might have made his bed of pillows piled on the floor at night and used as seats during the day. Or, had he lived in Roman times, this bench-like structure with a thin pad for a mattress would have served him as his bed. These were often ornate and costly and laid with rare woods, ivory, or bone. Marco Polo describes a bed used in India which might well have been the forerunner of the bunk bed. Fashioned of light cane and attached to ropes, the beds were raised at night to escape insects and snakes. Though undoubtedly practical at the time, this bed was hardly safe. Yet our word bed comes from an ancient Indo-European word meaning a dugout place for safe resting. On the other hand, the hardy Spartan Vikings introduced the feather bed, and slept the long winter nights in warmth when most of the rest of the world was still sleeping either on the ground, thin mats, or pillows. Throughout history, and as short a time ago as the 18th century, people carried their beds with them when they traveled. Of course, this presents some difficulty, and it wasn't always that comfortable. The word mattress itself comes from an old Arabic word, matra, meaning to throw down. Sleep at last. It really doesn't matter whether we understand sleep or not. It's very important in our lives. Providing, of course, our sleep is good. And mostly our sleep is as good as what we sleep on. Even in a dream, this Indian faker nail bed, for instance, would not be particularly comfortable to the majority of sleepy people. And the nostalgic hammock is not always as comfortable as it looks. Nor is this. That's why we human beings have searched through the centuries to make our sleep as pleasant as possible. That's why, for instance, we turn to a material that's so soft, so clean, so sleepy. Cotton. Even straw will act as a cushion. But we also want what we sleep on to be odorless. For instance, something that absorbs the heat of the body for cool, comfortable sleeping. And something with enough firmness to rest our weary bones and our weary brains. That's why we turn to the unique combination of cotton and steel. To an inner spring mattress, perhaps like this one. A mattress that is properly constructed to support your weight as you sleep. It boasts an adequate number of coils made of the right kind of steel wire. It must have an insulator of fiber or steel wire to keep sleepers from feeling the wire coils, plus soft layers of downy cotton to invite relaxation. Overall, a luxurious covering of cotton sateen which will not stretch with use and which can be cleaned with ease. We're all particular about our sleep, and we should be. Besides a firm, thick, long-wearing mattress, we demand good workmanship. The edges reinforced so they won't break down under continual use. Sturdy handles for turning the mattress, and inside, skillfully, carefully tied temper steel springs for firmness and resiliency. Real resiliency, not just a bounce effect. Not very comfortable? Did you get a new box spring when you bought your mattress? Maybe that's the trouble. It's a good idea, you know, for a simple reason. The box spring is actually the foundation on which you sleep. It supplies about 1/3 the total resilient support of your bedding when used with an inner spring mattress, and about 2/3 when used with a solid core mattress. If your springs sag, they'll make your mattress sag too, and no matter how good your mattress is, your sleep will suffer. When you think that you spend 1/3 of your life in sleep, the necessity for a good mattress and good box springs is apparent. With a new box spring, not only does the covering or ticking match the mattress, but each spring in the mattress is matched by a corresponding coil in the box spring which accompanies it. In every detail, they are made for each other. We rest our brains as well as our bodies when we sleep. Comfort. That's what we're after. That's right. When you're looking for a mattress, don't just look. Try it out. A good mattress is firm but resilient. And you now have a whole range of sizes to choose from. Twin, double, queen size, king size, and even round beds. That's a good idea, too. Check the label of a mattress. You'll find it spells out for you what's beneath the ticking, so you know what you're buying. Here you'll find a description of the filling material and assurance that the unseen parts are clean, made of good substances and according to the law. Of course, the mattress shouldn't have a hard slab-type surface that distorts rather than supports your body. Ideally, your weight should be distributed evenly and supported evenly. And it should support your weight without letting you sink too far into the surface. Sleep. As the English poet Sir Philip Sidney pointed out, come, sleep, oh sleep, the certain knot of peace, the baiting place of wit, the balm of woe, the poor man's wealth, the prisoner's release, the indifferent judge between the high and low. Yes, sleep may be a mystery, but it's no mystery why for 9 of 10 people, sleep comes sooner, better, on a cool, comfortable, cotton-cushioned inner spring mattress. A mattress made with sleepy people in mind. This is sleep, and so is this.
So I figured out the title while we were watching it. Thank you, the Cotton people. They were the ones that sponsored this.
This is sleep. Sleep. A familiar phenomenon.
Wow, it's the same film. Alright, I'm going to stop this.
No one knows why we sleep, but all of us know it's part of.
Alright, where am I? Yeah, so that's 2 copies of the same film on the same reel. Interesting. Yeah, so that was from the, where is it? It was from the National Cotton Council of America, made in 1961. Yeah, there you go. How about that? Let's watch this. Wait, what time is it? Let's watch this. About creek pollution. Enjoy.
For worry. Little Cedar narrows to a small bay at the south end. The water spills over a plank dam, and suddenly, it's Cedar Creek. It's now a bit of a stream, but with a big responsibility. Just out of town, a swamp drains into the creek, adding to its burden. The swamp and the creek are necessary to each other. Wetlands such as these must be preserved as reservoirs. On it flows past fields, pastures, and barnyards. each contributing its share of fertilizers and pollutants, on past private dumps and faulty septic systems. Near the city, the struggle increases. The crisis is reached in the city of Cedarburg. More businesses, more street runoffs, more drainage from oil-soaked parking areas. Cedarburg owes its very existence to Cedar Creek. 4 mills at one time were powered by its water. At the second sewage treatment plant, the creek picks up more effluent. Now, with a full load, it completes its 32-mile journey to its confluence with the Milwaukee River. Early in the cleanup battle, a front-page newspaper cartoon portrayed the sorry condition of Cedar Creek. Posters showing the cartoon were displayed in Main Street windows. The pollution fight made more front-page news. A series of 8 articles bared the ugliness of the problem. The articles told of hidden sewers and forgotten trash. They revealed practices of industry and attitudes of people. They presented the side of those who were dumping into the creek and the side of those who were intent on cleaning it up. They explained the difficulties faced by local health officers and the laws that should prevent this massacre. The views of resource engineers were spelled out, and the methods used to control water quality. Themes by students and efforts of teachers were put into print. They all proved the size, importance, and urgency of the small fight in the big war. The war that got bigger as the burden of the stream grew. The creek fights for its life as it struggles through trash in its bed, along the banks, below the dams, crates, tin cans, oil drums, pipes, bottles, tires, tables, bathtubs, even a car body. Rocks left by many winter ice flows slow down the flow. They catch floating trash. They're built up with silt. Fronts of buildings face the public. Their backs hunch away, ashamed of the creek and its dirt. Junk lines the banks. Weeds flourish. It's a sorry sight, but who cares? Scum and debris gather in quiet spots like this mill race. The screens in the race are long gone. Muck covers the bottom. The time had come. The public stirred. Cedarburg civic leaders decided to save the city's greatest natural asset. The City Council and the Park Board joined forces with the Cedar Creek Restoration Council to survey the situation. An inspection was made of its entire length in the city. In the tail race below a mill, the bottom was coated with slime. The combination of street runoff, industrial waste, and silt from upstream choked off life. A few years ago, one could swim here. Stretches of shoreline need major repairs. Retaining walls are crumbling. Stones are missing from arches under bridges. Rubbish and fill cascades into the stream. Junk is strewn everywhere. The algae is ripe. Blankets of algae cover the surface. Parasitic plant life matures on richly fertilized water. Precious sunlight is cut off. Needed oxygen is wasted. Life comes to a standstill. The handling of sewage is a big problem. The waste is carried by sewers to treatment plants. Here, solids are removed by settling processes. Any that are left are discharged into the creek. Heavy rains bring overloads from basements, gutters, streets, and illegal connections. The overloads often cause sewage to bypass the treatment plant, adding more pollution to the stream. Sewage that has been treated enters Cedar Creek from 2 plants. Chlorination of the effluent would destroy harmful bacteria. Neither plant has chlorinating equipment. Today, new plants must have this equipment. It costs money, taxpayer money. In the spring of 1965 and again in 1966, a survey of Cedar Creek was made by scouts, 4-H club members, conservationists, and civic leaders to pinpoint trouble spots. Plans were developed with help from state and local agencies. The findings started a chain reaction. The governor was pleased to proclaim the second week in May as Clean Water Week in Wisconsin. He urged schools and communities to take steps to protect our precious water supply. Governor Knowles decided to meet with the Cedar Creek Restoration Council to get an on-the-spot report of the survey. He wanted to know how the group functioned, what its objectives were, and what it had accomplished. Representatives of local and state government and leaders of civic and service organizations attended the 3-hour exchange of ideas, both indoors and along the creek. The governor presented the state's views on the pollution battle. He emphasized that the fight cannot be won without active citizen participation. Along the creek, he was shown examples of stream reconstruction. Hopes for a canoe trail were discussed. He visited the last covered bridge in Wisconsin. Here the creek wanders through a beautiful Ozaukee County park. The governor made a stop at one of the dams and saw the old swimming hole behind the Cedarburg Scout House. In Cedar Creek Park, Mayor Fisher outlined plans for restoration of the creek and its banks. He pointed out the recreational potentials in the park area. With summer, the work began in earnest. Boy Scouts followed plans of the Wisconsin Conservation Department. Forming stone brigades, they took rocks from the creek for rip-rapping the banks. The soil is held in place and creates a good footing for future vegetation. Rocks were taken from the bottom, pools were deepened, creating hiding places for fish. Below the dams, thousands of rocks were removed to deepen the channel. Ripple beds were built to stir up oxygen. As the current moved faster, the water grew cleaner. Foot by foot, sections of the creek showed obvious improvement. High water and ice took their tolls along banks and in midstream. Banks washed in, silt built up to form islands. Weeds and brush slowed the current. Signs were posted at all public access points to warn the public of penalties for throwing trash into the creek. After a year of work, much pollution had been eliminated. Again, posters reported the progress. In the city of Cedarburg, plans were going forward for the cleanup. The mayor stressed the need for restoring Cedar Creek. Local leaders met with state and regional representatives. An all-out attack on pollution and trash was planned. The regional engineer of the Department of Resource Development pointed out sources of pollution. He presented data on water quality measurements at regular checkpoints along the creek. Recommendations for restoring the stream were offered by the Wisconsin Conservation Department. Help available from the Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission was outlined. A report was given on water quality along Cedar Creek since 1964. Findings showed that in the year and a half of work, progress was being made. Plans were finalized for Cedar Creek Cleanup Day in Cedarburg. The call went out. Cedarburg needs you. Newspapers and radio stations spread the word. Posters in store windows echoed the battle cry. September 17th, Cleanup Day. This was it. Cedar Creek Park in the heart of Cedarburg is the assembly area. The volunteers reported for duty. 4-H club members, Boy Scouts, explorers, scout leaders, 8th graders, high schoolers, faculty members, and adults from every service club in town. All these and more came to join the fight. By 900 hours, over 350 volunteers registered for active duty. The 8 area supervisors and the 40 team captains, having previously reconnoitered the combat zone, briefed the cleanup crews. Fire department first aid teams stood by, ready to cope with emergencies. With all teams ready to go, the cleanup leaders urged the volunteers on to victory. Area by area, the cleanup progressed, up and down the creek. Trash of every description was dragged from the creek bottom and banks. Cans, bottles, tires, wheels, license plates, lampshades, sieves, bicycles, the accumulation of years. All were hauled ashore and sent to the dump. There was glamour, too. In fact, the girls outnumbered the boys. Civil defense volunteers coordinated operations by shortwave radio from field stations. A weed cutter was loaned for the task, so heavy-duty equipment went into action to build in a ramp. The shredding of the blankets of algae by the paddle wheels and the surrender of heavy weeds to the sharp teeth of the cutter was dramatic. Growth above the surface and tough roots below were sheared off. Cuttings were caught in a snow fence trap downstream and from there hauled to the dump. The current flowed faster. Cedar Creek was on the move. The weed cutter carved its way through thick beds of weeds near the shore. Care was taken to preserve vegetation on the banks. In shallow places, the paddle wheels churned up silt to depths of 2 feet, opening new channels, letting water flow. Weed control is a never-ending battle. Being impressed by the weed-cutting demonstration, the City Council bought the weed cutter. An island was bulldozed out of existence. A new channel was dug. The current swerved away from shore, reducing bank washouts. Rubble from the creek was moved to rebuild eroded banks. Another stretch was taking shape. Below one of the dams, rocks were removed from midstream to permit the water to flow more freely. These rocks were then put to use around tree roots and along banks to prevent washouts. Another channel, clogged with silt and slime, was dug clean. The water ran faster and cleaner. Power saws added their snarl to the noise of battle. Broken bottles and tin cans came out by the basketful. 20 truckloads of trash removed from the creek that morning. At noon, a siren sounded mess call. The wet, muddy, tired, but cheerful troops assembled for chow in a tent erected by the American Legion. The food furnished by the city was prepared and served by the women of the Legion Auxiliary. The creek cleanup in Cedarburg was a fair fight. Over 400 pitched in the battle. The action was reported in all the news media. A special tabloid section praised the citizen participation. The articles complimented the hundreds of teenagers on their turnout and accomplishments. The city was thanked for its cooperation. Altogether, it proved that the job could be done. These 4 tests, made at 16 checkpoints along Cedar Creek, determined conditions and progress. High coliform counts below sewage treatment plants indicate the need for further improvement to create water safe for human use. Many sections of the stream are reported as being safe. State engineers regularly test water for its quality. One test measures dissolved oxygen, necessary for aquatic life. Another measures the oxygen required to decompose any organic matter present. The third determines whether the water is acid, neutral, or alkaline. The fourth estimates the bacteria population. The resource engineer first withdraws a grab sample from the stream and takes the temperature of the water. 2 measurements to determine quality are made at the sampling point. One is the DO test. This determines the amount of dissolved oxygen available to sustain aquatic life and to be used in the process of waste decomposition. The other test, made on the spot, is for the pH value, which determines whether the water is alkaline or acid. The other 2 basic tests are made at the state laboratory. One of these is to estimate the bacteria count, referred to as the MFCC, or the membrane filter coliform count. For this test, a sample is sent in a sterile bottle. In the bacteria analysis, greatest consideration is given to types of bacteria traceable to the intestinal tracts of warm-blooded animals and man. A coliform count of 2,400 per 100 milliliters would indicate conditions unsafe for total body contact, as in swimming and diving. A count of 5,000 or more would signal danger for partial body contact, as in wading or water skiing. The other laboratory test is for BOD, or the biochemical oxygen demand. This indicates the amount of dissolved oxygen required to decompose any organic matter present in the water. Now back again to streamside tests. Chemicals are added to the grab sample to fix the dissolved oxygen and causing a so-called flock to form. While the flock settles in the bottle, a small sample is taken in a glass tube for the pH test. The color of this tube sample is compared with control colors in the sampling kit. By matching the colors, the pH value is determined. Then acid is added to the bottle sample to dissolve the flock. As it dissolves, it will develop a color, and the deeper the color, the higher the dissolved oxygen content. Water quality testing is done through the year at 16 or more checkpoints along Cedar Creek, and particularly above and below known or suspected sources of pollution, such as sewage treatment plants. The cleanup attack is also aimed at eliminating carp. Carp thrive best in water of poor quality. They churn up the bottom. They destroy plant life and the spawn of game fish. In 1966, a carp derby was held, which ran for 6 weeks and brought in over 500 of the rough fish. Many local merchants donated prizes, and 3 of them sponsored weighing-in stations to determine the largest, the longest, and the greatest number of carp taken each week. There are still tons of carp in Cedar Creek, but as the water gets cleaner, the game fish will return and the carp will go. This one will never spawn again. In the winter, when ice covered the creek, tree and brush removal, which would have been impossible in summer, was accomplished. Chainsaws and axes roared and barked. Limbs hanging in the stream were cut. Dead and broken trees were dismembered. Brush and trash exposed now was hauled out. Huge piles were readied for burning. The heavy stuff went out on trucks loaned by the city. About 40 volunteers pitched in. One way or another, the stuff came out. On shoulders, by winch, by truck, and by sled. Tree after tree, load after load. The Boy Scouts got a bonus. Loads of wood for the fireplace in the scout house on frosty nights. It was cold, blustery. At noon break, hot chocolate and hot dogs in a shelter revived the work crews. After lunch, more sawing, more piling of brush, more burning, more loading. After 6 hours, a quarter-mile of shoreline had been cleaned up. Again, city crews and citizens had cooperated on the job of creek restoration. Dams and dam gates are in need of repair. Some gates are rusted shut and parts are missing. One dam is crumbling, its lip is gone. Reinforcing rods are exposed as water flows on through. In 1939, one dam upstream washed out. How long will this one last? Many old homes along the creek require new septic tanks and adequate filter beds. The law is clear. No sewage or waste shall be permitted to enter surface waters. Cedar Creek is recognized as a navigable stream. Fences and dams require permits from the Public Service Commission. There are many illegal fences and dams on the creek. Barbed wire fences are used to keep livestock from wandering, but they're a great hazard to people traveling the creek, and they must be approached with extreme caution. Ordinarily, they're unexpected and difficult to see. Cuts from rusty barbed wire can be fatal. Electric fences across the creek are in violation of the Industrial Commission Code. Farmers have their problems too. Cows that roam freely break down banks. Valuable land washes away to become silt. Silt clogs the creek, and a clogged creek can't work. Somewhere there must be a solution. Homemade dams also cross Cedar Creek. Not only are they an obstruction to navigation, but they also cause accumulation of silt and stoppage of current. Furthermore, they are illegal. The water level rises and falls in Cedar Creek. After the ice moves out, and usually through April and often into May, there's plenty of water for canoeing. Channels should be deepened. Dam and fence obstruction should be considered. The land under the creek is usually privately owned. The water in the creek is public property. The Cedar Creek Restoration Council is trying to work out a common solution so that everyone benefits. A committee representing farmers and conservationists proposed the marking of fences with a warning sign placed above high water marks. The plan also provides for covering of the barbs to avoid personal injury. Colored telltales, the length of the wire, also warn of the dangers. Bringing a stream back to its natural glory is not a simple job. But on Cedar Creek, fishing is coming back. Already there are good catches of northerns and panfish. The clean water and plenty of natural food are a help. the creek is alive with minnows and other forms of aquatic life. A fish count made by the state showed that the creek abounded with at least 13 varieties of fish. They found plenty of natural food for fish, too. Game fish stocking was assured. Victory was in sight. Even the lowly crab, a scavenger, has his place in the life of the creek. There are game fish in the creek. Give them a little time. Give them a place to grow. Game fish need clean water, plenty of oxygen, and natural food. Remember, a few years ago, many of them were killed off by pollution. Now this fella needs a little more time to grow. But what's this? Looks like a keeper, right out of Cedar Creek, and plenty of fight, too. How would you like him? French fried? Broiled? Well, there'll be more someday. Yes, someday the creek will be clean again and restored to its natural beauty. It can be done. Whatever dream you may have of your favorite stream, or pond, or lake, that dream can come true if you do something about it. It's up to you.
It's up to you. You can clean up that creek. You can take the time and energy to make sure that the rules are being followed, and you can put money and your time into cleaning up that creek so that it is safe and is enjoyable for everyone, and also ecologically sound. You can do that. Do it. Make us proud. Get involved. Do it. Am I just talking about creeks? No, not necessarily. Thanks for tuning in today. Very much appreciate your time and your energy and your comments. Boy, we watched a wide variety of different things today. And we will be back again tomorrow on Wednesday to watch more films. We've got, maybe I'll figure out this giant reel that's down here that I keep stepping on and see what's on there. Yeah, we'll just keep going. Go, 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 go. Everybody have a great rest of your day. It's actually nice outside here in Raleigh, so I might go outside and do some weed eating, which I do not like, but you got to do it. But if you like what you saw, hit the thumbs up, hit the like button. You can donate via the Super Thanks button on YouTube. You can also go to ko-fi.com/AVgeeks or patreon.com/AVgeeks. Those are great ways to support us. Thanks so much. We will see you tomorrow. Everybody take care. Bye.